Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on day 4 lunch hour of the Ignite conference. We promise to make this a very, very valuable session for you. My name is Tanuj Bansal, and I'm in the Azure marketing team, and I'm joined with
Dennis Karlinski, and I'm in the Azure engineering group, specifically the Azure customer engineering group. And we're going to do things slightly differently if you haven't figured this out. On day 4, when people have emails to catch up on and other things, instead of doing the usual Tanuj talks, and then he brings me up on stage and I talk, we're just going to stand up here together, and we're going to tag team. Figure in your personal lives, there probably aren't that many people whose voices you want to hear consecutively for a whole hour. So we figured at work, that's definitely true. So you'll hear us go back and forth, and hopefully that's OK.
Awesome. So let's get going. To start with, I wanted to share this slide with you. Probably all of you have seen this slide somewhere or other. Let me see a show of hands. OK, almost probably 1/3 of the room. This slide essentially represents the rolling thunder and success that the Azure business is having. The rightmost stat on the slide, more than 90% of Fortune 500 companies relying on the Microsoft cloud and trusting their business on the Microsoft cloud is the most telling one. And of course, on the left side are stats that show the momentum, the service itself. I also built out this slide using some of the big quotes over the last 12 months or so. In fact, we have even more exciting press coverage over just last 4 days of innovation that was delivered. But essentially, all of these quotes contribute eventually to say Azure is doing great, and Azure is really making customers successful in the digital transformation with the cloud. Now, what that means is it talks about Azure, but it actually doesn't fully capture the soul of the company that Satya has developed. So we wanted to share this quote with you. It also speaks to the soul of the company, but it also talks about this session itself, what FastTrack is all about. And I'll read it word by word. It is not just about technology. It goes far beyond that. It is even the approach we take to our business. It's how we partner, how we create the flexibility that speaks to the real-world needs of our customers. That is the transformation that's afoot. That's the momentum that we have inside of Microsoft, driven by you. So this is essentially a quote from Satya's speech or address internally to Microsoft employees. And that's what FastTrack in the session today is about as well, is going beyond technology and saying, how do we work together with the customers, with our partners, to make the use of this technology successful for a customer's business?
Actually, before you go forward, I think one of the things that we were talking about in the slides, I think the first two, if it's not you, if you didn't see your company's name up there, it's a bit of slideware. It's like, hey, there's Azure momentum, it's amazing. So much of what we're seeing internally is, hey, it's really great that somebody's made a decision to go with Azure, and that's fantastic. But if we can't help them actually be successful with that decision, and if we can't help you turn that into some sort of impact, whatever impact you want to have, some of you want impact where you want everybody, every workload, everything on Azure. Others, you're doing some multi-cloud things. Others, you're dabbling. If we can't help you be successful with that, then all those pretty slides at the beginning don't mean anything. So that's really the rest of the session is about how can we work with you to help you be successful.
So that allows us to kind of start talking about the broader FastTrack, the topic for Microsoft Cloud, and we'll get specific to Azure here rather quickly. How many of you have heard of FastTrack in any context? Office 365, Microsoft 365? Awesome. So you're familiar with the idea of really creating a customer success service that's built on people, as in the engineers that Microsoft has, Microsoft 365 or EMS, and now Azure, combining that expertise with tools and best practices that we have learned working together with customers. And this slide kind of summarizes, first came Microsoft 365. It used to be FastTrack for Office 365. I was fortunate enough to be involved in it from very, very early days before it was even called FastTrack, when we did it about 4 or 5 years ago and brought it to market for Office. Then Dynamics 365, you're familiar with that potentially. And then just recently is when we announced FastTrack for Azure. August is when it became available as a preview in the US, Canada, and Australia regions. But actually, we have been in a pilot mode since last November, so about 6-7 months before that. And the key here is while the FastTrack umbrella is there, these businesses are really, really very different. Microsoft 365 and Dynamics are actually maybe even closer, very much of a different way of operating and configuring those products, versus when it comes to Azure, Azure is not a finished goods product. Azure will stop where your imagination stops, potentially, but otherwise you can take it anywhere you like. That's not the case with many of the other products that are purpose-built for serving certain business scenarios. That makes it super exciting that you can do anything you want. It also makes it very, very challenging in how we operate. And that's why the approach we have taken for FastTrack for Azure is very, very different. Even in the way we rolled out the first preview, it's literally been going on since November, as I mentioned. And now we are in the preview mode since August. So coming up to almost a year of this learning process of building this service.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, too, is it was actually good for us that Office 365 went first. I think some of you have probably gone through that program. Moving a mailbox, I mean, there's something, the first couple of times you're doing it 10 or 20 times might be kind of rough, but after that, you figure it out. We've had a chance to watch the Office 365 team go through. There's some best practices that they've done that we've tried to carry over. There's probably some less than best practices that happen that they kind of close the gaps on and that we aren't doing from the beginning. But I think that the complexity piece is where we were just super realistic, because people wanted FastTrack from us 6 months to a year ago, and they say, well, just give us the basics for Azure and get us started. And I think when I look out in this room, if I asked you to describe what are the basics for Azure, there'd probably be 10 different answers from 10 of you. So that's why it took us a while to really formulate what does that look like, what are we seeing across different customer sets. And when we did pilots, we didn't just pick one type of segment. We didn't work with one, very large organizations. We worked with EDU, we worked with government, we worked with financial services firms, all the way down to somebody with doing Azure, like a small POC on Azure, all the way to people that are literally already had moved business critical workloads over and wanted to really take that next step. So we really did our best to kind of learn from the other FastTracks so we could do it a bit more right.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to ask, how many of you are any partners in the crowd? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And you're reasonably familiar with Office 365 and other FastTracks? Okay, I wanted to ask that question because partner is actually an area, and both of us are guilty parties. We were involved in the Office 365 FastTrack, as well as we have, in fact, learned a lot of things by doing them, you could say, doing them wrong in the start, and evolved further. Even in those programs, with Azure, the approach is radically different. It's based on those learnings, but also the fact of how Azure as a service is. So altogether, I think you're going to see the approach that's really, eventually the goal still remains customer success, but very much hand in hand with partners. So with that, let me double click on what is it that we do with FastTrack for Azure. So just on the right side, the website to go to for all of the information that we will be sharing. We'll go obviously in depth, but a lot of it is available at azure.com/FastTrack. But the key idea here is, and this is on the left side when you read the benefits, it's all about what are we really doing for you, or how do we approach FastTrack. Number one, you're really getting direct assistance from Azure engineers that are on the phone with you. This isn't a support team. This is not a V-dash. These are full-time Microsoft employees hired and directly integrated into or working for the engineering organization. And these engineers then work hand in hand with the partners in the account. There may be a partner already in the account, so we'll work with them, together with them, or we will, in fact, if needed, we will provide references to a partner for the customer, and that represents a great opportunity as well for our partners. And lastly, all of that engagement, there are a lot of pieces in here as Azure is so broad and deep, but it's based on years of understanding of best practices, things to do, things not to do, the tools that got developed out of working together very closely with our customers.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is there's a reason that we really call that first bullet out. Some of the feedback that we've had from some of the other programs that Microsoft has run in the past to help onboard folks has been, hey, I feel like I'm getting kind of spotty help. Occasionally I'm getting great assistance and I'm designing things and architecting things the right way. Occasionally it feels like the person I'm talking to is a little overwhelmed and doesn't quite have the depth on what I'm doing. So from day one of the reasons that you see when Jason Zander did his keynote earlier in the week, he has passion for a lot of things, but he definitely has passion around FastTrack. He was super clear. We are going to hire the highest grade engineers, and they're going to sit in engineering. And that's how we're going to deliver it, so that, because there is no backstop, we are the backstop. So instead of worrying about, oh, does this person know what they're doing or not, if they possibly can't answer something, we're going to go and we will bring to bear whatever resources we need across all of engineering to make sure that you get the right recommendation, because we have a tagline that we use internally: build it right and architect it right the first time. I'm sure it hits home with all of you. You don't want to go back 4 months later to do any re-architecting, so we'd rather do it right the first time. So again, you'll see some of these fine folks here wearing these sweet blue jackets. These are some of the real engineers that are going to be, that are not only in the booth, but are going to be talking on Skype and on site with hopefully most of you.
Yeah, and just the three big engagement phases that we go through, and these are really more of a mental model. This is not as cut and dry, and you would see us give you more details on how these phases break down, but essentially around planning, setup, and eventually helping you develop and deploy the solutions. Planning has been one of the very, very interesting lessons learned so far in our work with FastTrack for Azure. We're even working together with the customer on what is the first frontier to break through and what are the key things or key projects to consider for them. Can be a great win for the customer team, because it sometimes can be so daunting to even make that first step. And then, of course, beyond that, once you have a bit of a vision and a plan, you can go into learning to set up the platform, develop a POC, and our aspiration is to all the way guide the customer into production. We may not be there to push the button. At the same time, we will be there in a very strong advisory role. We will have your back as a customer or a partner as you take that solution that we have worked on, work together with you into production. So the customer criteria, as the preview tag says, this service we're learning. It's a crawl, walk, run approach. We're learning, rolling it out into new geographies. We started with US, Canada, and Australia. Now we're expanding it into UK and our Western Europe region. It's still English only, but we'll continue to even reconsider that and expand throughout the year. The second piece here is just allowing us right now to work with customers that have not necessarily made a commitment in dollar amounts to Azure, but have a vision to take Azure and do that digital transformation that we want to help our customers with, do a significant big project together with us. Lastly, there's some customers that we, in fact, have a dedicated set of solution architects. So we're saying, you know, if you have a great amount of help from Microsoft, they will be bringing our IP and our people to bear if needed. So really programmatically, you probably may not need FastTrack, but if you do need it, we'll engage if that's required. And then we'll talk about the key set of solutions that we are covering in a short moment. And those are the solutions that we'll look for a customer is interested in developing dev, test, backup, and disaster recovery, for example, or just, of course, the top priority solutions. Those are some examples of the solutions we're starting to cover. You'll see a full roadmap of all of the solutions that are coming into the fold.
No, I think that's good. I think it's one of those things where we talk about trying to be agile. So given the solution roadmap that we have is going to be influenced by feedback that we get. It's going to be influenced by feedback that we get from current customers, but also ones that are hopefully just coming on the platform. And there's somebody like, we will not release something before it's time. We want to do it right. So when we actually pull together the right IP and we pull together the right engineers trained on it, and that's why it takes us a little bit of time to get it right. But we do have a pretty wide breadth of solutions that we'll double and quadruple click into after, I think, a couple of slides from now.
Great, and one last thing I want to mention about FastTrack. For those of you who are familiar, FastTrack is predominantly a remote service. We are doing it through online one-to-many, one-to-one sessions. At the same time, our end goal is to make the customer successful. We do not have a scale model to go on site, but we have the will and resourcing to do that if that's what would help the customer be successful. What that means is, for example, and this is a real example, when we had a challenge with a customer customer-facing networking issues, and we essentially got an expert from Redmond, go down, work with the customer and the partner that was involved, the 4ExpressRoute, I think, is the scenario. And essentially, within a day or so, they were able to debug on-site together the issues they were facing and unblock that deployment and then head back. So that's a commitment we have. I just want to bring that in as well, even though it's not programmatically and
no, it's good. And I'll actually give you the other example. I think there's folks that we went to and said, hey, we will go on site to you. It was a pretty important customer. And the person's response was, well, that's awesome. You'll come to me. My entire team is distributed throughout the world. So it'll be you and I sitting in a conference room with my team joining us via Skype. So if you want to come join me, you're welcome to come hang out. And we're finding that more and more, and I'm sure that speaks to some of your organizations, no matter the size. You're distributed. You're probably connecting on maybe once a quarter, once a year. You get everybody together. If that aligns, we'll come join that. If it doesn't, we'll just be on Skype just like you. So.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, we have been playing around with FastTrack and actually had it in market since November of last year in a pilot mode, and now in preview openly since August. So we have put together an early video of some of the early successes with our customers. We'll play that next for you and in fact get into a specific customer case study deeper after that. So let me play that video for you.
And we're going to play it really loud to keep you guys awake during lunchtime.
Great. And what I'm going to do here is actually invite one of the customers who is here today. Please give a big warm round of applause to Miss Linda. Come on up.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. Are you sure?
No, we're sure. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Now you can hear me for real, right? Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Are you awake? Because I got a nice story to tell you. My name is Linda Morris. I work for the Comores Company. I am affectionately known as Miss Linda by my colleagues, my friends, and my family. So when you see me in the hallway, you can certainly say, hello, Miss Linda, I came to your session, okay? I'm going to talk to you about our journey into Azure. I will tell you that we are a 2-year-old company with a 212-year-old history. And what I mean by that is the DuPont company decided to spin off its performance chemicals company. And as a result of that, we created Chemours. And so Chemours is the performance chemicals company, the performance chemicals business out of DuPont. And so in July 1st, 2015, we spun off as Chemours. Now, it took us about 13 to 15 months to take all of the systems that we had and that we needed. And so what happened is we ended up with this business problem. And that business problem was that we now spin off this new company, right? This new company is spin off and saddled with a lot of debt. Part of that debt is all of those legacy systems that we have bought over from Chemours. And when I'm talking about legacy systems, I'm talking about Lotus Notes. I'm talking about applications, in-house applications that were built on 2003 servers and the gamut. I'm sure you all are familiar with those. And so as a result, our company said, okay, look, we got some things going on. If we're going to last and we're going to be successful in the environment, and what we have to do, we're going to have to change how we do things. And so we could not behave like we did when we were DuPont in this great big conglomerate. We got less money, less resources, and less time, and we got to get moving, because if not, in 2 or 3 years, we won't exist. And so that business problem was finding a way to allow us to be agile. So they started what we call the transformation project. And that transformation project was so that we could get simplified, so that we could standardize, so that we could modernize, and so that we could do the things we needed to do in order to remain competitive. Because remember now, we had products that we knew were the best in the industry. However, we now needed to prove that we were the best in the industry as we were standing up as a company. And so as we stood up as Chemours, we began the process of saying, okay, if the company is trying to transform, how can we in IT transform? And so as a result, we ended up with a new CIO. And that CIO just kind of grabbed the map and said, we're going here. And when he pointed to here, it was, we're going to do things differently. And one of them was, we're going to get out of a standard data center and we're going to go into the cloud. And at that point, I mean, people like me who have always run to technology, I was really, truly excited. I'm going to tell you, I was really excited. But I can tell you that most of the folks on my team were not excited. They were not trying to hear anything about a cloud solution. And so what happened is I says, okay, I'm going to go out here. And it was myself, another guy from security, and another guy from the networking team. And we went on out into the deep. And we stood up an environment for Azure, and we stood up the express route, and we got a couple workloads, and we put them into production. And we said, okay, now we're ready to go. And then my security team showed up and knocked on the door. What are you all doing? You can't put things in the cloud. This needs to be architected correctly. We've got to understand what it looks like and how it works. It's different than it's on-prem versus being in the cloud. And so what we did said, okay, then tell us what you need us to do. But we're going to keep these workloads here because we want to show that, yes, we do have an opportunity and we can be successful in the cloud. And so as I reached out to our Microsoft, our TAM and the folks that we work with, they explained to us, guess what? We got this thing called FastTrack. And I'm like, okay, how fast is that track? Because we got to get going. We have a company now whose stock started out about $20 and now we down to $3. And you know, if your stock is down to $3, you know you're in trouble. And I can't tell you what the folks on Wall Street were saying about that $3 stock. And so we really needed to do the things to get the cost out of IT, get that old infrastructure and get those old applications out of our environment so that we could help the company move and transform as quickly as they possibly could. And so Azure was going to be our way out of this mess, and so that we would be able to last for forever. And I'll tell you about that story now because we the bomb. But anyway, what we did was talk to, it was Randy. I never forget, Randy sent me an email and he told me, I'm going to be your contact for, and Randy's in the audience, I'm going to be your contact for FastTrack. And I said, well, Randy, we're going to have to move fast. And he said, well, how fast? I said, I want to do the meeting next week. And he said, next week, absolutely next week. And oh, by the way, I haven't told the team that needs to come into these meetings that they got to be in the meetings. And so I'm like, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spring them on them. I'm going to spring it on the telecommunications folks. I'm going to spring it on the networking folks. I'm going to spring it on the security folks. I'm going to spring it on the folks that manage the VMs. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to bring everybody in at the same time, because, you know, if you bring everybody in at the same time and we're not all on the same page, I can't tell you what's going to break out. And trust me, I knew it would break out there. Remember now, and I got these naysayers when it comes to the cloud. And so I've got to get these naysayers on board. And so I need to turn these naysayers into evangelists so that they can then get the rest of the people on board. We're a small IT operation. And so what Randy and I did, we worked on the schedule, and they came with, here's Azure 101. This is what it is. So when we kicked off the session, we did Azure 101 so everybody could learn what Azure was. You know, there were grunts, yes, Microsoft, yeah, they tell you that. And so we were hearing everything, but we kept going. And then what I did is I said, okay, Randy, we're going to have to do this differently. We started off with Azure 101. We told them what it was. Here's IaaS, here's PaaS, here's SaaS. You can do networking, you can do computer, you can do all of these things. And then what we decided to do is the next day, we kind of switched around the program. And you'll have to do that. It's a model that they give you, and it's a process, and I would tell you to trust the process, but I will also tell you that you're going to have to modify it so if you got people that are not real true cloud believers. And so what we did at that point is the security team was the toughest team. I can't tell you, that was the toughest team. And so what we did is Randy went out and they got us some very good security engineers that understood the Azure security. And as a result of that, they sat there and, you know, our security guys, they're good. They're very good. They protect us and we're proud of them. They also kind of stop me from doing things sometimes. And so as a result, we did a real deep dive, and that wasn't necessarily part of the Azure 101, but we did a real deep dive from a security perspective so that they could understand what we were doing, where we were going, how we were going to do it, how it different, because the big thing was how does it differ from on-prem versus being in the cloud? And so, and I kept asking, okay, they keep telling me the cloud is different than on-prem, but I need to understand why. And through these sessions in FastTrack, we began to understand what's different being on-prem from being in the cloud. And I will tell you, in theory, your principles are there. You have to have the security. You have to have the right network. You want the right performance. You want the right size VM. You want to be sure that your applications can run on those things. But you want to do it in a way where it's cheaper than being on-prem. Because let's be real clear. Again, I told you, we're saddled with a lot of debt. And so one of our main goals was to get out of debt. And in getting out of debt and paying off that debt, we had to reduce what we were spending in the IT space. And we were able to do that. So we started off with the FastTrack 101. We had the sessions. We recorded those sessions. They were able to ask all the questions they needed to ask. I brought the right people in at the right time versus everybody being in all of the sessions. The application people came in and were able to ask their questions and have the right conversations with the right engineers. The networking people were able to come in and ask their questions. The folks, the networking security, because there's a security group and then there's the network security. They were able to come in and ask their question. And so as a result, everybody, I won't tell you that they were there lock, stock, and barrel, but they understood, okay, we are going in this direction. We got to all march to the same tune, and it's going to start here. And I heard you guys say that it was November, but it was actually a year ago for us that we started on our journey to Azure. I will also tell you that you're going to have fits and starts. I don't care how much planning you do, and we did a lot of planning. We did a lot of architectural drawings. We went from one environment to another environment. We tore it down. We built it back up again. When something wasn't right, we were right back to the FastTrack folks. We need this particular engineer because we're not understanding these things. And so now we're well on our way. We've moved all our dev and test environments, and we're smack dab in the middle of, and I guess we're about 70% complete with our production environment into Azure. And so what we decided is by the end of 2018, we're going to be an all cloud environment. Right now, we're a hybrid because we have an old, I wouldn't say old, but it's not the latest and greatest when it comes to SAP. So that SAP workload still has to stay on-prem, but everything else, and our backup to SAP, everything else is actually going into the cloud and going into Azure. And we're very, very grateful for the FastTrack Azure team. And we are excited because I don't know about you guys, but we went into the cloud and we saved a whole lot of money. I don't know any other way to tell you that. If you do it right, you engage the FastTrack folks, you understand what you're going to do, everybody's marching to the same tune, you really, really, really can reduce your costs in managing your data center operations.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question for you. Looks like a pretty long and complex project so far and very successful.
Yes.
If you could give one advice to the customers and partners in the crowd, what would you give?
Just
what would
one?
you say? Okay, maybe more than one.
The first thing I would tell you is you can't go it alone. We have one of our partners in here, Agile, excellent partner that helped us with the things that we needed to do around security. And so, yes, we are all experts. You all are all brilliant. I know you are. You've been in this space. You've been doing it for years. But we also get expert blindness. And so because of that expert blindness, you can't go it alone. You need to get someone and get people in that will challenge your thinking, because going into the cloud is very different than being on-prem. I don't care what they say. I don't care what you might hear from those folks, those diehard folks that want to stay on-prem. But it is very different. So you do have to engage the experts. You have to get some help. The second thing I will tell you is trust the process. Sometimes it's going to be your wheels are churning. And sometimes you have to take a half a step backwards, because we had to do that. Remember, we built our environment, had workloads in there, and had to do, oops, stop. And I'll tell you why, because in Azure, you know, you have this, I call them the sister data centers, the paired data centers. And when we started out, we didn't realize that. And the data centers that we had were not paired. So we had to step back and get the right paired data center. So that meant rebuilding our environment all over again. Again, we engaged the FastTrack team to help us to get an engineer. For some reason, we just missed all of that documentation. Again, we're trying to go it alone, trusting our expertise. And you just can't do it alone. And then I think that, and then the third thing, so trust the process. And then the third thing that I will tell you is you gotta have fun and you gotta laugh at yourself. You really do, because if not, this thing can get intense. I can't tell you the number of meetings that I sat in with my security team and I didn't know who was gonna go over the table, all right? And I was about ready, it's like, I mean, to the point where they would say, well, Miss Linda, I don't want to hear that. We got to get out of this data center, and we have to be out of this data center, and we've got to contribute to the bottom line of the business, because it's all about the business. And the business needed to be successful, and in order for them to be successful, we had to help them to be successful, because quiet as it's kept, IT is an enabler. It is not a cost to be managed, okay? And so we needed to get them there. And we knew if we did that, they would start to think differently about who we are as an IT organization. And to tell you, that really happened, because now one of the 5 pillars that we have for taking our company to the next level has to do with what we're going to do in IT, in fact, in putting SAP on the cloud in Azure. And so we're very grateful to that. And by the way, the stock went from $3 to well over $50 all throughout this year because of the work that we did to help that company get to where they're going. And that's why they now trust us. They trust our CIO, and we're just so very grateful.
Thank you, Ms. Linda. I got to ask the question, Randy, did you buy any stock? 3 to 50, come on.
That might be unethical.
Oh, you didn't know anything. It's not insider, it's just belief. All right.
By the way, sitting there, I've decided that the next time we do this, it's going to be the Miss Linda show, and Tanuja and I are going to come up
We
for
will
10
be
minutes,
guest speakers.
and we're just going to reverse this slightly.
It's actually a good segue into this slide. And what I wanted to say before we get in here is lots of shades and tones you heard in Ms. Linda's talk about need for flexibility, need for really working with the experts, whatever area it may be. I think we were working at times with 4 different partners: security expert, networking expert, SAP expert. And that's what this slide all up represents on how we work with partners, how we work with the customer, and moreover, how flexible we are for the life of the engagement.
Yeah, and the thing that I would jump in here, and for the record, the rest of the slides really are meant to go into exactly what we're doing from the technology perspective and what we're going to cover. There's only literally 30 after this. I'm not going to drain all 30. They're there for your reading pleasure after the fact. But the key takeaway here is one of the biggest lessons that we learned from Office 365 was, when do you insert the partner? And I guess the question I'd ask is, for those of you that are customers in the cloud and doing something in the cloud, how many of you have a partner? Come on.
For the customers,
For the
how many of you
customers,
have a partner?
Wow. Okay. Here's my advice.
We can
doubling down on Miss Linda's advice. Bring in a partner. No matter how much you think you know this in-house, there's very few companies that we've run into that have the aptitude to do both the IT side, the dev side, thinking through DevOps and all the things we're going to cover. And so what we found in Office 365, the partner got brought in too late. The partner got brought in closer to more of the development time frame, or even in some cases, hey, we're in deployment, let's bring the partner in. So we do it very, very differently. The partner actually comes in right at the beginning. So when we talk about folks like Randy and Sam and other PMs that we have on our team, they actually pull the partner match right at the beginning, and from day one, we are in the passenger seat together with you. Well, it's kind of a big passenger seat. Sorry, a big driver's seat. You and us are driving, the partner's in the passenger seat. As we move down the path and we get closer to getting to a POC and we're starting to really make tracks towards dev, that's when we actually switch sides. The partner then starts driving together with you. We move to the passenger seat to make sure, we'll call it maybe acting as adult supervision in some cases, but making sure that the right things are happening. And then we don't disengage. We actually will stay engaged to make sure that you're on the right track. That might be that you don't need us after a month. You might need us after 3 to 4 months, et cetera, but we're going to stay engaged to make sure that you're successful. So this is really the path that we follow. I don't think this comes as a surprise to any of you. It's a very natural progression down the cloud deployment path. Yeah.
In fact, the next slide, I believe, is the slide. You want to talk through them, the count?
Yeah, I think this piece here too, if you're a partner, we're not going to spend too much time on it. We can have those discussions based on what I just described. There's lots of, clearly in this room, there's an opportunity for a lot of leads, because I think there's like 3 hands that went up for partners to engage. But in general, what we've seen from our partner community is really the antithesis of Office 365. They've actually seen that the rising tide is lifting all boats, and you're having a chance to engage and get more business. And for the customers out there, again, I recommend that you bring a partner or multiple partners in depending on their domain. It'll make you more successful. And if you don't take my word for it, take Miss Linda's word for it. So, solutions. I know that the way that many of you think about the cloud and think about your path to Azure is maybe around app innovation. Some of you are thinking about data plat. Some of you are thinking about just infra. And others of you maybe are really advanced and thinking about IoT. We've kind of tried to do the best of all worlds throughout the solutions that we're bringing to the table. Obviously, you've got some ones, and I'll joke about this, not every solution is created equal. I know Ms. Linda was talking about SAP. I know it's the same bulleted size here as backup and archiving. As you know, backup and archiving, if you don't, takes a lot less effort than figuring out SAP in the cloud. But still, it's super important. We'll talk about the details and a little bit about what we do. Obviously, we talk about dev test and DevOps, especially if you are taste testing in the mobile space, and what do we do around mobile ops. And then obviously lift and shift and app modernization. I'm going to take a guess. I'm not going to ask you to put up hands. Some of you here, your CIO or CTO signed a monster deal because the cloud was the way to go. And they said, we got to be in the cloud. And then they turned to you and said, all right, I hear this lift and shift thing. Like, we should do this. Let's just do it. Like, you should do that like a month, like maybe 2 months. Like, what do you need if you're really slow? And then you kind of laughed, you kind of nervously, and then you went back and started to dive in. Lift and shift is like the most overused term ever. It takes time to figure this out. It's not like, oh, one day I come in and we just forkload everything. We really dive in and talk about what does it break down to. How should you be thinking about things like actually governance, things like subscription management, and then some of the real basic things that go into that. And then how do you make decisions on should you actually be lifting and shifting, or should you just be modernizing some of your apps? And frankly, in some cases, should you just be building from scratch? And we'll talk about that in a little bit, and actually building apps that are actually native to cloud from the beginning. So those are the sort of discussions that we'll have with you. We have empathy, I promise. We've done well north of 100 of these. We have met every variety. We've met varieties where the IT director and the folks on the dev side of the house are actually like best buddies. We've run into one where one was awesome. We finished with an IT director. We finished through all these aspects. And it was only then that he said, now I can go talk to those guys on the dev side that spun up 75 VMs. And we're like, we've been working with you for like a month. Why didn't you tell us? Well, I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know how to actually look at them as possibly a friend. So I kind of assumed they were a foe. And we've seen that, and we've seen people that, again, are non-siloed and working together from day one. So wherever you are, we've seen it, and we can work with you on that. And these pieces are available right now.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add on here is, even though we have a lot of details in the slide, as you all know, that when it comes to really being specific to a customer, there are many, many flavors of these exact same solutions and scenarios, and that's where, again, our intent and flexibility comes in. It will work with you to define the version of these solutions or these scenarios that fits your need.
Yep. And then the next set, so obviously we talked a bit about data plat. I know we just came out with SQL DW, and that is really, well, great. Now you're doing something, and actually, well, here, I'm pretty confident all of you, no matter where you are in your cloud journey, have a lot of data. A lot of data. You've got data that's sitting on-prem, you might have some data that you've actually migrated to the cloud, and you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to get something out of this data? And that's really where we think about things on the DW side, and how do we help you with HD Insights? How do we help you get something out of that data? Because there's enough, I think, to go around for everybody. And then we did talk about SAP. Obviously, like I said, it's the same size bullet as the rest. That probably will be a longer journey. We'll be along for the ride for that journey. We actually have a practice in SAP out of our engineering team. It's one of the few areas where we've literally just said that we need to invest lots and lots of engineering know-how into that space. And then obviously for those that are going to be doing things that are going to be customer-facing on the digital marketing side, making sure that you're able to understand what do I bring to bear out of those supporting technologies. Because the one thing that I will say that is sometimes daunting, and you're not alone, we joke that by the time we leave here, we've probably added 5 services to Azure. I think when I joined 2 years ago, I think we had something like 30, 35. I think my second week we had 40. We're well north of 100 now. And I know you've been in sessions and you've seen the innovations with what we're doing with Azure Stack and RI and all these areas. It's changing all the time. Our job is to help translate that for you. If you can figure it out on your own, you rock, kudos. But our job is to help kind of guide you through that process and talk about, if you look at the supporting technologies, you could double click on each one of those and there's more services behind it. Our job is to weave that together for you. Perfect, and this I think kind of rounds out all the pieces. We talked a little bit about business analytics and AI. I think one of the things is as you start to get towards HPC, it's one of those things where you're a bit more mature on the curve of what you're doing with Azure. We kind of tend to put IoT at the far end. I do have some advice to you. Bite off the chunks that are manageable. And if you have that CIO that said, oh, this IoT thing, we got to get there. We got to get there tomorrow. You should have the same nervous laugh as you had when they told you to lift and shift in a month. And then you want to really come in and say, okay, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What kind of sensor use are we trying to put in? What kind of data are we trying to harness? And what are the logical steps to get there? Because going from deciding on the type of storage that you should have to how are you going to stream all your data in from IoT sensors is probably a bit of a leap. If you decide to go down that path, I got to be honest, there's not many times where we'll stop you. That'll be one of those times where we'll stop you. And we'll say, hey, that's probably not a great idea. Let's walk you through some of the steps that are on the way. And one of the things that you'll notice about not just the Red Hat on Azure piece, but if you haven't figured it out, remember Satya's picture really early on? I've been at Microsoft for 16 years. There used to be a thing where, obviously, if you came in with something that wasn't Windows, I would say that Steve and some others maybe frowned upon that, I think is a good word. I don't think our love affair with things open source was probably a love affair. There was something else instead of the word love. We've come full circle. What you see is an embracement of OSS, you see an embracement of Red Hat, you see an embracement of flavors of Linux. It's here. We want to make sure that our tool sets, you've seen some of the announcements, even SQL Server 2017, we're running it on open source environments. Like we are there. So whatever you have, you bring it to the table. And if you want to deal with Red Hat, great, let's do that. We're not going to make you come over to a full Windows environment, and our tool set is being moved to make sure that we're not always relying on Windows-based tools, et cetera. So, and you can bring your own tools, and those can be in open source tools as well. So this is how it all comes together. I love how there's people taking pictures. Feel free. You'll get these slides, I promise. They'll be in your, actually, if you use the app, you can have access to them as well, according to Miss Linda. This is our roadmap for how we're going to get there. Anything you don't see on here, we'll put on over time, and based on customer demand, there might be some other sub-scenarios that we bring to the fore as well.
Yeah, and just for even broader context, these are the top 10 Azure solutions that we hear the most about from our customers. That does not mean this is it. There may be other areas that are missing, and we'll, again, flexibly, we will be willing to work with you and see if we can help our customers with that. But these are the sort of the front foot 10 areas that we are focusing on. And it's the same case for fields, for online content. These are very much streamlined with those, what you would hear as Azure 10 solutions based on the patterns we see from our customers using Azure.
Oh, wait, don't click yet. Did you get the picture? OK, go ahead, click. All right, so Azure fundamentals, let's just dive in. I'm not going to, like I said, there's a lot of pieces on here. I promise you that we double click on these pieces. These are areas, and I'm going to reiterate some of Miss Linda's words. You need to spend time here. I know that there are some of the slides I'm going to cover, I'm just going to tell you, they are boring things and things that you sure as hell need to nail. Yeah. And you'll hear me say the word policies a lot, and you'll hear me say the words governance a lot. And I know that you got into IT because you love policy and you love governance. I know you did, be honest. If you don't spend the time here, it will come back to bite you later. I promise you that. We've seen it in so many customers. When you think about subscription management, I can give you examples of watching customers on Skype, and like you're seeing the little arrow like waffling, and we're like, are you okay? He's like, well, once I click on this and enable this, are our meters spinning? Are we going to be getting charged something? We're like, no, it's okay. It's okay. You can click here, and then we'll set up who should have access, because immediately, no one has a list, by the way, of people that need access. It's really weird. Everyone comes with a list of people that shouldn't have access, or groups that shouldn't have access. And so kind of interesting, there's not a trust but verify model, it's in reverse. But this is really what we focus on, is making sure that you understand how to manage your subscriptions, you understand how to actually put the right environment in place where you're in control, and you're not worried that the money that has been invested, which is now under your stewardship, is being misspent in any manner. Good. Azure AD. So this is one of the things that's fundamental, and this is where you finally go, stuff I understand. On-prem, in the cloud, identity management, tiny, tiny importance. It's huge. You have to understand it. A lot of the knowledge that you have will actually be applicable, and this is where you're going to be doing incremental knowledge in these areas, thinking about how you work through single sign-on, how do you make sure that your naming conventions in the right place, and how are you using RBAC? How are you using the right places to give the right set of perms and making sure that you understand it? If you've been through Office 365, M365 FastTrack, that's the new brand, a lot of time is spent on AD and making sure that you can move your authentication mechanisms from on-prem into the cloud. Networking, this is another one of those. Networking has never not been important. When you're on-prem, networking, you could have done everything right, and if you're networking it goes down, you are pretty much SOL, and I'll do that acronym later. When it comes to the cloud, it's the same thing. When you're thinking about, especially at the bottom, not just VNet connections, but when you think about VNet peering, and when you think about VNet to VNet, when you're in different regions, and how do you articulate the gateway strategy. But no matter what happens, you have to understand the basics of networking. And if you feel like you know networking inside and out, awesome. We'll just have like a 20-minute discussion on this. We'll validate, let you feel great about it, and we'll move on. And I think that's one of the things that Miss Linda brought up. We don't have like these modules that are like, whether you know this or not, you have to stay here for the exact amount of time. We will skip past that, and we'll spend more time on other areas. But if you feel like you're not super strong in networking, this is the place where we'll spend a lot of good time and energy. And if you have an architectural review for us to look at, we will look at it. Governance, yeah, I think by accident. Notice everything's in bold. I don't think it was actually in bold on the previous slide. I've covered some of these people. This is, again, how are you thinking about governance throughout? How are you thinking about your naming standards. That's super important. As you know, that's something you want to put time and energy into. Going back and doing renaming is not a fun exercise. And then obviously, again, RBAC, there's some new tips and tricks. I mean, RBAC's been around for many, many years, and it's our ability to evolve that and make sure you can use it in a cloud environment, and then making sure that you're actually able to restrict. Remember I said about who should have access, who shouldn't, who should be able to perform what kind of activities. And that's super important because that's one of the things that we take very seriously on our side as well when we think about live sites and how we run operations. You always got to be super clear on who should have access to what. Solution enablement, perfect. And you notice I'm going kind of quickly because I know that we're gonna actually try to finish a little bit early. And like I said, all the slides, still pictures? Okay. Dev test and DevOps. This is one of those things where especially if you are not super clear on the DevOps environment and you're not super clear on mobile ops, this is where we will spend quality time. This is where we will make sure that you understand not just VSTS, but what kind of other tools are usable, especially some open source tools, and which ones are and are not applicable in the space. And then obviously we'll talk about how to make sure that you can actually make it that it's viable in your organization. And this is one of the places where, again, if you're purely on the IT side and there is a different organization that's focused on the dev side, this is a great opportunity to have the meaningful together discussions to have a strategy that you apply consistently across the board. And you notice the last one, go back for one sec. Almost each one of these slides consistently says, defining policies on how resources should be used. It's not by accident. Backup and archive, even though it's not in bold, obviously, these are super important. You want to figure out what kind of schedule are you setting? How are you doing this consistently? Obviously, we're going to be doing a fair amount of things that we do on our side to back things up, but this is where you start to hear me talk about something about resiliency being part of what you and us are on the hook for together. A common theme you'll see, not just through here, but as we get into DR, is I promise you, we know the teams that focus on resiliency to make sure that Azure is up and running 24/7 with many, many nines. If we do our job and you do a shoddy job on how you set up your backup, how you set up your DR, how you build your app up, and it's not in a resilient manner, we have a blip, we fix our blip, we have tons of engineers that are on it, we're back up. You might not be back up immediately. You might not be back up as fast as your competitor. You might be back up much slower than your competitor because you didn't do things, you didn't build for resiliency on your side. So it's you plus us is the resiliency story, and you hear this theme throughout. So again, this is something I think that is fairly basic for most folks. DR, this is some of the most, we have some amazingly entertaining stories. I will tell you one that may or may not have been for a very, very important world-impacting event. And their DR story, it was the customer had farmed this out to a small partner, and we looked at their stuff and they said, no, we have a total DR strategy. We have one VM, and the disaster recovery story is the same VM in the same region. And we kind of, yeah, the same look that you guys have now. We said, can you just say that again? They're like, yeah, we're using the same VM, and we're gonna back up to that. It's gonna be not a problem. It's in the same region. We're like, okay. And in between, kind of biting our lips, saying, well, gosh, look, great. Let's walk through some other options that don't involve that. Let's talk about a multi-regional approach. Let's talk about how we can replicate some of those pieces out across and spread your risk out wider. Now, thankfully, we did it before this, and this really is a world-impacting event. It was a vote that was taken in a particular part of the world. And we were able to fix that in time. But again, you want to have the right story here, and it's one that we can help you with. And if you have something for us to come to the table and something to look at on how we think about capacity planning, but also here, this is where you do want to think about both how we handle the physical machine side, and then how do we handle VMs? How do you handle VMs? And how do we make sure that you're clear on what to do in both scenarios? Did you already move me on to database migration? That's awesome. That's how you know I'm done, is that we move on to database migration. So this is one of those things. There's an awesome Dilbert. I think some of you may have seen it. Like, it's to the effect of, like, I think the boss asks him, like, hey, we need to do something in the cloud. And he asks him, well, what would you do? He goes, I don't know. Figure it out. And the answer immediately is, we're going to build a new database. And that's always the answer. So here, the problem is you now have a lot of databases, or you might have a centralized database in place. Now it's time to actually talk about migration. Great. Should we talk about DB? Should we talk about some other options? What's your game plan for this? And as Ms. Linda noted as well, getting the right people in the room to have this discussion with us is a really good idea. People seem to be really touchy about the data that they are on the hook for and that their title says they are on the hook for. So making sure that you come in and you're able to actually figure out the new data plat strategies and making sure that you can actually migrate everything over is super important. And notice at the bottom, we say the same exact thing, policies. You got to have the right policies in place. If you don't link this to your DR story, this will also fail as well. So we will talk about this. Again, we've done this before. We've seen it. We want to share that with you, and we'll kind of guide you as we go. SQL DW, again, what happens when you have mass amount of data that you want to go ahead and put into play? How should you be thinking about the details behind it? How should the configuration work? And what are actually the principles that you want to put in for design? I'll keep resiliency. I'll bring that back up again. Security is one of those things, obviously, that you have to think throughout all of this, and I think all of you have got that nailed. App lift and shift, our favorite story from before. This is we're going to sit down and have some really good, deep discussions, and we're going to sit there and figure out the best use of ARM, the best use of the different portals that we have for you to think about this scenario, and then we're going to talk about how many apps, and are they truly legacy apps? And what kind of support are we seeing if they're from that third party for applications being moved into the cloud? And then we're also going to be talking about how do we think about building apps directly on the IaaS side. So again, if you feel like you have depth in this, we can spend more time there. If not, we'll pass it through. Now we're close. App modernization.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So app modernization, obviously this is one of those decisions that you have to make as well. Are we going to tackle lift and shift first, or do you have apps in your environment where you actually, it's time to move, it's time to think about modernizing those particular apps? And actually, let me pause. How many people are in this area of their kind of clouds, not strategy, but their maturity level, and are thinking about modernization side? Just Linda, 4 or 5 hands. Okay, perfect. Well, it's one of those things, again, where you have to make the right decisions on how are we going to do this? Is it going to be an app services play? Or is there going to be some service fabric and microservices that we want to put into play, et cetera? We have, for lack of a better term, multiple options for you to do this. It'd be easier if we just had one and we were able to guide you down that path. We have a couple, so we can talk about how Azure Functions and CDN and all those aspects can come into play, or we'll talk about how you think about through microservices and how you make use of that area. 2 more left. Digital marketing apps. We talked at length about this. Look, they've got to be scalable. Especially if you have something that's going to be hit over and over and over again, it's got to be scalable, both scale out and up. It's also got to make sure that it's secure, and it's got to be resilient and reliable. These are all basics that I think that you have in play, and it's just making sure that we can, especially on the WordPress site, which obviously is the world's most popular one, making sure you can leverage and take advantage of it and feel really confident when you get up and running. Yeah, and frankly, there isn't much difference in how I think we would approach these same areas. Again, security, making sure that we're not vulnerable to attack, and making sure that we have, especially here, is the third to the bottom, the background task processing and the caching is super important whenever you have anything to do with e-commerce. We've supported some of the biggest e-commerce launches, some of the biggest customer-facing launches over the last, 2 years, 18 months, including incredible scale where you're talking actually about tens and tens and tens and thousands of processes per every minute, probably every 10 minutes, about 1,000 per minute. And so those are the things that we can bring to bear to make sure that you're using it the right way, and also trying to figure out how you think about the database side and making sure that you're capturing everything that you need to capture there, and how we leverage SQL DB. Man, that was fast. Yeah.
Auctioneer's version of going through. Obviously, there's a lot of detail on all of those slides, and we data science debated if we should have those details, and we said, it'll be very effective and useful if we talk through them. You got to see them, and then you can download and look at them even more. And in fact, as a follow-up, you can also come by to our booth if you haven't visited. Any of you visited our FastTrack booth yet? 1, 2. 3. We have what we have arranged as what we're calling architect bar, but essentially we have 4 areas where you can sit privately with our engineers and discuss the specific project and work that you're doing for good one-on-one, one-to-many consultation, and we'll huddle as needed. And if we're there till 4 o'clock today, I think that's when the booth closes. There's still opportunity. If you have follow-up questions, of course, or if you would like to engage in that consult, that's been a pretty effective and really engaging time with customers. We're getting pretty high survey results and sat scores from that.
And the reality too is if you don't have something detailed for us to go, just turn on. There we go.
You're on.
If you don't have something super detailed for us to go through, you guys get me. We'll just figure it out. Just come ask questions. We have about 10 engineers here, so you come ask questions for whatever you want. And I do have one ask before we get to the last piece, is we have stuff to give away. We have enough stuff for all of you. But if you get it, you have to tell a friend about FastTrack. That's my only ask. It's very detailed. You just have to tell them. That's a good point. That's actually a great point. You can tell a family member. I don't think they're going to care. But you can just tell somebody about it. I think that's the best way is to get out through word of mouth. And we're going to throw all these things at people, but they're kind of heavy. So you'll hand them out afterwards. And I see that you're coming up to ask a question. What we're going to do is, because we literally have 10 of us here, is we're just going to wind it up and just let people come up and ask whatever questions they want. And that way we'll address all of them.
Yeah, but don't leave. There are the cups, and there are also these pop sockets that are kind of useful for the phone. So
visit the webpage too.
Yeah, the website is azure.com/fasttrack. Hopefully easy to remember for you. That's where we have all the details as well. And if you're watching any of the sessions online, we put out a full list of sessions here in the deck once you download, so you can revisit and look at these sessions as well if you wanted to. With that, we want to say thank you for your time. Really appreciate if you could engage and, in fact, give us the evaluation and feedback on this session as well. And thank you for joining us.